The Cubs spring training camp is underway, and the games start tomorrow. We're going to get a firsthand look at the battle for center field. And right now, that battle consists of three guys and not Cody Bellinger. We're going to get into that here. Those options outside of Bellinger and what the Cubs may be forced to do if they don't re-sign last year's comeback player of the year. Or maybe I shouldn't use the word forced. Maybe that's what the Cubs want, to let one of these guys take the position and run with it. We're going to talk about that right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe. If you're part of our crew, thanks. Welcome to our roster. And if you're not, give us a thumbs up. We want you to be part of it. Hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get this thing going. Go Cubs. What do you say, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Baseball channel. I'm Mick Gillispie at Broadcaster Mick on the socials, and it is great to talk baseball as we get closer and closer. I mean, we actually have a game coming up tomorrow. So as we get there, let's talk about what's going on right now for the battle of center field. And as of now, still no Cody Bellinger. We've hit this thing over and over again. The Cubs have signaled to Bellinger's camp that if he wants to be on the team, they need to get it worked out. The sides are far apart from what it sounds like on what the money's going to look like. I think the Cubs wouldn't mind paying more per year, just less years. And Bellinger and his agent, Scott Boras, want to have lots of money and lots of years. And it doesn't feel like there's a big market right now amongst the major league teams from anyone to give him that. And we can talk about it. Is it exit velo on hits or outs? Is it the 2 seasons before he got to the Cubs? You're still talking about a former MVP and a guy that was really the catalyst of last year's Cubs team and would probably slot right into that again this year if he ends up back on the roster. All right, so let's talk about the obvious picks, the obvious choices of guys who are going to jump in and try to win this job. And we're going to start with the guy that I think makes the most sense, and that's Pete Crow-Armstrong, HollyWood Pete. You know, the Cubs traded Javy Baez to get him from the Mets, and a lot of people were surprised that the Mets gave him up to get Javy Baez, and it turned out not to be a great landing spot for Baez. He ended up signing with the Tigers the next year. We haven't seen El Mago in a long time. We'll see what his season looks like. But this is a great return. I mean, this is the type of trade that you want to make when you're an organization giving up a guy that helped you win the World Series and a face of the franchise type of player. So you get back Pete Crow-Armstrong. Last year in the minor leagues, Pete Crow-Armstrong started in Double-A, then went to Triple-A, and then he came to the big leagues. He was 0 for 14 in the major leagues, looked kind of shaky at the big league level. And it looked like he was having a tough time mentally adjusting. And he spent the entire offseason working on his techniques at the plate with Dustin Kelly, who's the Cubs hitting coach in Arizona. So, and I know that he's a hard worker. I've seen it firsthand. What I'm going to tell you about him is stuff that you probably already know. First off, he was the best defensive player in the minor leagues last year, according to the award that they gave him at the end of the season. Not just a Gold Glover, but the guy. He gets on base. Great batting average, 283. 20 home runs, 82 runs batted in between double and triple A. Guy's got a knack for the dramatic. He gets the walk-off hits. He gets on base and scores big runs. He had 37 stolen bases. But what really surprised me about Pete Crow-Armstrong was the passion and the fire that the guy plays with. And you're going to love watching that when he gets to the big leagues to stay. When he gets there and is comfortable and starts to play his game, he's an all-out type of performer. And it feels like the Cubs are all in on him as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why they don't feel like they're being held hostage by Boris. I mean, I think that's what Bellinger's camp would like to do with this contract, but the Cubs know that they have other options. And if some people have described it as a stare down between the Cubs and the Bellinger camp with Scott Boras, but to me, it just feels like business. You got a guy who everything tells us is going to be a great player, except he just needs to do it in the major leagues. And he is one of the top prospects in baseball. I think that you guys are really going to like him. He comes up same ilk as a Kris Bryant, as a Javy Baez, as a Kyle Schwarber, where he was very young and one of the best players in double and triple A. He's still very young, and I think that this is the year where he figures it out in the big leagues. We're going to have a good time watching him during spring training play for the Cubs. And I just got this feeling that he's going to ramp his game up. Now, the games don't count in spring training, so you can't always equate what happens there with what's going to happen on opening day. My prediction is not only is he going to make the team, but he's going to get a hit in his first at bat. And it may be a home run because he's thought about that all off season, that he didn't get a hit in his 0 for 14 and just didn't do the things that we know. All right, the second guy that I feel like we really need to talk about when it comes to this position is Alexander Canario. Now, Canario, like Pete Crow-Armstrong, was a trade for one of the Cubs' best players. And just like El Mago, who will go down as one of the all-time greats, Canario was traded for Kris Bryant, another all-time great. So think about that. Here's another guy that comes to the Cubs from the San Francisco Giants for an all-time great. Now, Canario has spent 6 years in the minor leagues, and to tell you about him, power guy, 91 home runs, 319 runs batted in. He's a producer. You saw it last year when he hit the grand slam in his first start and had 6 runs batted in a game. I think that's a rookie record. He plays very good defense, not on the caliber of Pete Crow-Armstrong, but no one is. Though he is reliable, he's a smart player, fiery at times, calculated at other times. He's a difference maker on the diamond. A couple of years ago, he was in Double-A for most of the season. He got promoted to Triple-A, and immediately the team quality went downhill. And you could tell that not having him in the lineup, even the threat of him in the lineup with the power that he brings and the run driving ability, hurt that club and really showed the impact that Canario has. The other thing I like about him is he's not up there free swinging all the time. His on-base percentage is around 350, which for a power guy like him seems really good. He's going to push for this center field job. I think that he'd also be a good corner guy. And I could see him taking at-bats away from players like Ian Happ or Seiya Suzuki, because you're going to want to find a way to get him in the lineup. He can also DH as well, but he's another guy who could really help the Cubs and carry them with that power. And when he got traded by the Giants, there were people within that organization that hated to see him go, that felt like that could be a mistake. Kind of like I felt when the Cubs traded Nelson Velasquez to Kansas City last year, because you know that this guy can really make an impact on the team. And this is the year where he's finally matured and ready to go. Last season would have been there had he not been injured in winter ball. And he played a little bit of winter ball this year, but the Cubs cut that back, and I don't blame him. It was one of those things where, hey, go get about 15, 16 games and then get back and let's start working on getting ready for this season. Now, those two guys, those two rookies are going to be up against a guy that came out of nowhere last year and really did well. And I'm talking about Mike Tauchman. And the fact that Mike Tauchman is a Chicagoland guy, saw him with other clubs, including the Giants, never really put it together. But there were a couple of stretches last year where the Cubs rode Mike Tauchman. Great plays in the outfield. Think about the home run that he took back. Got on base, was a tough out. So I think Tauchman plays into this because even if he's not your starter and you got the left-handed attack of HollyWood Pete or Pete Crow-Armstrong and then the right-handed power of Alexander Canario, you still like to have Mike Tauchman in the mix. He's going to go into camp trying to duplicate what he did well last year and prove to everyone that what he accomplished last year when he was playing his best baseball is something that he could even stretch out more and force these young guys to sit on the bench. The longer that Cody Bellinger isn't signed by the Cubs and these guys go out and they play the type of baseball that they're capable of playing, it's going to make it difficult for the Cubs to want to spend that money on a Cody Bellinger. Now, I think we like the fact that Bellinger can play first base. We've broken that down with Michael Busch and Matt Mervis, similar guys and situations to Alexander Canario and HollyWood Pete, where they've been successful, hugely successful in the minor leagues, but haven't been able to translate that into big league success. And I think a lot of this goes back to why the Cubs made the move from David Ross to Craig Counsell, because Craig Counsell is built for transitioning guys a lot like Joe Madden. Not exactly the same formula, but the same success where you can take guys that are in the minor leagues, get to the big leagues, and then turn those guys into everyday performers and players that you can count on. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Now, all of this goes out the window if Cody Bellinger signs. Then these guys are splitting playing time with Cody Bellinger, who I believe would be half at first base, half in the outfield. Or maybe it would even be, a third in the outfield, a third at first base, and then a third at DH, right? But Bellinger's going to play if they sign him to a big contract. So what these guys are going to try to do is make the Cubs even more comfortable in a situation where they don't bring back Bellinger. And maybe those resources, whatever they would be, could be saved and used for something else down the line. And I think that that's a thought, if that even makes sense, that the front office would have as they kind of watch how this thing progresses. So I think that Bellinger and Boris are taking a risk right now by not negotiating a contract and getting him out there. These spring training games, for a lot of reasons, could make or break him. Now, if these guys struggle in spring training, it may put the Cubs in a spot where they say, you know what? We don't want to go into the season without someone proven that can play first or center field. So we'll see what happens. But this is really an exciting camp based on that. Not that I don't want Bellinger signed today. I think we all kind of feel the same way. But the exciting part of it is you get an opportunity by his absence to get an idea of exactly what the Cubs have and maybe what they don't have. And is it fair to assess it like that? Well, yes and no. Yes, in the fact that it's games, it's reps, you can go watch. Craig Counsell's going to have his eyes on these guys and figure it out. But no, because, again, the games don't count. The pitchers don't pitch the same way in Mesa, Arizona, as they do in Wrigley Field, Chicago. All right, that's it for the show today. We're keeping an eye on the situation with Bellinger and everything else with the Cubs. Can't wait for that game on Friday to get things kicked off. It's a great time of year. Thank you guys for getting in the comments section. I always love to read your comments. You're so well thought, man. And I've been absolutely impressed with how knowledgeable you guys are at the game of baseball. The other thing is anytime I make a misstep or maybe don't clarify something, you guys are on me. That's a lot different than other sports because I think in baseball, the stats matter a lot. And I think that's what makes it fun, honestly. Comparing stats from guys that played in the past to the guys that play now. Baseball is our stats, right? Home runs, RBIs, on-base percentage, steals, all that stuff. All right, I'm Mick Gillispie. Again, thanks for hanging out with us. I want to remind you, too, that our channel is presented by our friends at the Tennessee Smokies. The Smokies and their team store, smokiesbaseball.com/store with a lot of really great stuff. They want you to check out all of their gear. They've got championship gear, 45 years since the Smokies won their first title. The team is going to get their championship rings in Mesa on March the 8th. It's going to be a really exciting day because that hasn't happened in so long. Well, there's gear and autographs and game-worn jerseys and all that stuff at smokiesbaseball.com/store. Thanks for hanging out. I'm Mick Gillispie. Again, if you're not part of the channel, make sure that you do like and subscribe. And let's talk to you guys again really soon. Have a great day.